Welcome to Decker Tech. I'm Aaron Decker, and today we're talking about Malukah. Malukah is the Dark Healer. She used to have, or pretty reliably had, a solo healing damage build where she would do all of the dark talents, and just best healing was a good offense. That is still very viable at lower difficulties, but not quite a mainstay of previous times. So what we're actually going to be talking about is the healing version of Malukah. We'll be going down the healing side of things over here and talking about how to build her going around healing spells, not necessarily the dark options of her. There is still a dark DPS version that we'll talk about later, but for now we are just doing the healing version of Malukah. I would like to thank everyone that has supported me on our journey here, making all these videos. A lot of ways you can help support. One is directly via tips. There's a little heart underneath the video here. That'll give you the option there. Also, my internal combustion engine works really well on compliments and feedback, and the feedback in particular helps shape future videos. Let me know what you want to see, what you would like to see more of. It really helps to know what's appealing to you, so I can give that information to you, because there's a lot to talk about in across the Obelisk. And for now, let's just talk about Malukah. Malukah passive says when she applies dark, heal the lowest target. This will still have some effects in our healing version. We're not going to be applying dark very often, but be sure to note that this dark healing triggers any sort of when healed effects, so that'll come into play later. It also, since it goes for the lowest health target, it's very nice to kind of even things out. Like I said, we're not going to dig too much into it because of the way perks are set up now. It's kind of hard to double dip in both dark and the healing route, so it comes up occasionally, but it's not going to be our main focus. And then for level 2, we have both yin and yang rituals. They are basically the same. Easiest way to think about it is yin, when you spend dark, you get regen, and yang is when you spend regen, you get dark. So we want more healing created. Generating more dark isn't going to be very beneficial to us because we're not going to have many perks or talents or items that affect the dark charges we get, but we will be able to increase our let's see, for every regen. So sorry, they're both going to be applied. So yin ritual triggers anytime you apply dark, no matter how much dark. Whereas yang ritual is the number of regen you apply, you get that much dark. The problem is it's hard to apply large amounts of regen at a time, because the way this actually triggers, it has 9 uses, is if I did an AoE regen to the whole team, it would trigger 4 times. So it's really only got like 2 successful AoE uses out of it. And that's really just going to be applying dark and doing a little bit of healing, which, yeah, it's a small burst of extra healing when we apply regen. But for the most part, we're not going to get as much mileage out of it as we will with this yin ritual, where since we're still applying a few amounts of dark, it doesn't matter how much dark we apply, we still get the full value of regen, and this applies to all heroes, and this has 5 uses. So like I said, with the yang ritual, you basically only have 2 or 3 triggers out of this before it disappears, and the triggers you're getting are just flat healing amounts, whereas the yin ritual, you'll get 5 uses out of it, and the amounts you're getting are regen totals, which will decay over time and actually affect you for several turns at once. So in the regards of healing, yang is like a burst heal, and yin ritual is a long-term heal. So yin is the one we're going to go with for our healing build. And then at level 3, this is kind of where we're playing off of. This level 3, these energy rebate talents really help you define what cards you're looking for in your build. And for Malukah, that's going to be healing spells. Every time we play a healing spell, we get a energy rebate, and we grant regen to the most damaged hero. This will be a large source of your regen. We don't have to get much regen from cards, but we'll still end up with a lot of regen on our characters because of it. And remember, this is whenever you play a healing spell, we don't necessarily have to heal someone. So unlike the other when you heal trigger effects, this isn't reliant on this. We will always get the regen 3 times a turn when we play a healing spell. So it's very nice, even though it says most damaged hero. So most damaged hero at all 100% health will just be the lowest health target, last time I checked. Next option, we have Vaccine or Love Enhancer. Vaccine says, hey, you get healed more often. Oh, sorry, this is Self. We heal ourselves more, we generate dark to all monsters, and we gain regen and buffer on ourselves. The problem is this is kind of slow, and this is for very long fights. It only lasts 3 uses, so it only lasts 3 turns. But if a fight's going to, you know, if you draw this on turn 2 or 3, and then you're expecting it to happen 3 more turns, that's turn 5 or 6. Not many fights will you get much use out of this overall, and all it does is generate a little bit of healing to your team based on how many monsters there are. I prefer Love Enhancer because this says, hey, when you play cards, you get things, which is very easy to play around. And for every energy you use, you gain 1 vitality to each hero. So even with no perks, this is fairly decent, but we're going to have perks that affect the vitality and possibly some items. I wouldn't necessarily build items into it, but sometimes you just kind of end up with them. So yeah, the way vitality works, it's always a benefit to have vitality on your team, except for very specifically the Lancers in Act 4, but that's very easy to play around. You just don't play Love Enhancer on those fights. And then last but not least, the claim to fame for Malukah versus, say, a Reginald healer, because basically the healing brew is the biggest thing we've talked about so far, and Reginald does the same thing, so both Reggie and Malukah play the same in that regard, up until this point where Malukah has Mojo. We have more regen charges, more vitality charges, and every time we play a healing spell, we dispel all our heroes. So the goal of her is going to be playing 3 healing spells every turn, and that'll basically cast a mass dispel for free, basically keep all the debuffs off of our team. We'll talk a little bit about some synergies and anti-synergies with that, but for the most part, remember this is only the final couple of fights of the game. You're not going to see it except for either right before the twins or right after the twins, so you can't really rely on this for anything other than just the final boss fights. Alright, let's get into Malukah's starting cards and starting deck. So, with Malukah, she starts out with a lot of cards that say Dark. We are going to cut most of those. Vitalize. Let's talk about Vitalize. So I'm starting at the bottom of her starting. I can type. Vitalize. Vitalize was a good card. Then perk system changed. Now it became an okay card. And then Decadence changed, and now it became a bad card if you're running Decadence. Vitalize is okay to play around with if you are not running Decadence, which is one of the corruption modifiers. I could just show it here. Vitality heals only 50% of the HP gained. Well, most cases in the game, 50% rounds up to say 2.5 rounds up to 3. With this, that's not the case. 2.5 rounds down to 2. So instead of healing for 5, it heals for 2. So we really don't want Decadence except for into our talent cards later. Trying to pay 2 energy for 2 or 3 vitality. This is with perks, by the way. It's baseline 1 and 2. So the rate on this card is so bad. It's just an easy cut for us to begin with, especially if you're running Decadence. Even without Decadence, it's a kind of questionable card to be running. So, that's why we cut it. Next, Vile Lances and Black Karma. These are all the cards that she starts with that are meant to be generating Dark. Yes, Dark is healing for us, but it's only heal 1, heal 2, not, heal 5, heal 7. And deal damage. Yes, it deals damage, but since we're not going the damage route, it's hard to dip into. These cards just do not scale well as we go throughout the game because we don't have perks, we don't have items. They're not going to be effective healing for us. So the card we're really looking for, and this one used to be fairly bad, but with changes, it gets pretty good. Once you have a decent amount of perks, and because you don't have the dark perks or the shadow perks anymore, the rate on this card is currently really good. Expect that once this video sees certain eyes, maybe this changes because I think this card got overlooked in the perks rework. It is just good value for what it is. Even if you're doing 4 damage to yourself, you're still healing for the 10, which this is, remember, with Decadence applied for my screen. Your screen will look a little different. And then you upgrade it, you get even better rates. And you have to remember that with Malukah, these applied Dark is actually applying 2 more heal, and that heal goes to the lowest health target. So it's a very variable heal. It'll heal 2 targets at once, 1 for the main target and 1 for the lowest target, which can trigger some on-healing effects, which we'll talk about once we talk about items. And also, all it does is just you take a little shadow damage, which you can have courage up if you're taking base hit point damage, or you can have block up and you'll take no damage. So this really helps Malukah even out the health of the team, and it's just a value card. I would grab 2 more, go to a total of 5, upgrade them to orange if you can afford it. It's not really needed because for me, base 16 with Decadence and full perks, that's 1 for 16 is a great rate, because the vanilla or the baseline you're looking for is 10 for 1. So 1 energy for 10 heal, and this is 1 energy for 18 heal and 4 damage. So very, very good card for Malukah. I don't recommend it on anyone else because she's got the whole dark thing going on. Let's see what else we got here. So we took out the bad auguries. Those are also just the damage dealing card. So most of the cards we've taken out are dark damage cards, and the things that we're adding in are just the Shadow Men's, some sort of courage. With courage, this is a card you're gonna this is a buff you're eventually gonna want for the Archon fight or Act 4, but you don't want it to be on a card that is dead in a majority of cases. Like, you want it to be a useful card when you're not using the courage from it, when you're not fighting enemies that deal those types of damage. So for Otis, you do the defense card. We're not running that. Anthem of Hope here, the reason I picked this is because even if we're not using the courage, it's 2 energy, Inspire 4, which is an okay rate. It's not the best, but it gives us something to do on a versatile card when we're not using the versatility of the card. Also, if for some reason we don't have to do any healing and we have this in our hand and we have lots of energy sitting around, it's a way to convert our resources into team resources. So if you're sitting on a turn where you're not doing much healing, you'll play the Anthem of Hope and you'll pass along your energy in the form of cards to the rest of the team. So it's a versatile way of playing this because none of the other ones are very good for us of the other courage cards, Ray of Hope and Infused Courage. The rate for Infused Courage is really bad when we're not playing Shield, and Ray of Hope, even though it is a decent heal card, the upgraded version is really the only playable version because of the 2 energy to 1 energy. And compare Ray of Hope to our Shadow Men's. So Shadow Mend is 22 healing for 1 energy, and Ray of Hope is 11 healing for 1 energy, so it's half as effective. So I'd rather put our versatility into the Anthem than the Ray, but an alternative is definitely the Ray. This will just be a weak card overall compared to the other options. It will play into our late game playing healing spells, triggering stuff. So there is that going for it. But just overall, it's kind of a balance between the two. You can pick either one just fine. I recommend Anthem of Hope because it's a lot simpler to play with. There, that was enough babbling about courage. Where are we at? So, Clarity, Detoxify, and Healing Rain. If you've seen any of my healing videos, you know that I call these filler cards. I would run anywhere between 1 or 2 of each copy of these, depending on which ones you enjoy the most, what fits your team comp the best, what zones you plan on going to. Like if you're planning on going to the fire biome for Act 2, Healing Rain goes up in value because you can dispel fire. If you're going to green biome Act 2, Detoxify goes up because you can dispel poison. And then clarities are depending on whether your DPS needs more Inspire or not, or more cards. And that's kind of like your build preference. Me personally, I always run the clarity because that's just how I roll. But before I kind of got used to running the clarities, I'd be running the healing rains and detoxifies based on just what zone I'm going to. So all 3 of these are very playable cards for healers, and we just don't have many valuable cards for Malukah. We're not picking these because there are no better options, like there's no good options. We're picking them because they're valuable enough, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't need to be... Like, Healing Rain isn't uncommon, but these other 2 are common, so they're very easy to craft. There's no downside to them. We'll just eventually have better cards, but those better cards are going to be unlocked in the rare slot, so for Act 2 or later, or they're going to be late game cards, or they're going to be talent cards. So we don't really need to be crafting anything expensive just to replace it later. So we're just going to craft these cheap things as filler cards until we get to those expensive items. So mix and match to your heart's content, clarities, detoxifies, and healing rains. Also based on your divinations, what you do. Fanaticism, very small thing of, hey, this is technically a heal 3. or this version, like, because it's applying dark, Malukah actually gets some benefit out of it. Not really why we're running it. We're running it just because it's an efficient energy card, and until we have our level 3 talent unlocked, you might struggle to have enough energy to cast all your heal spells. Usually, to counterbalance the X amount of damage you're doing to yourself, you either have to have courage on yourself, block on yourself, or spend one of the energy to cast a heal spell on yourself. But overall, you're still gaining energy because this is 2 right away and 1 later, so basically gain 3. So it's just a valuable card to pick up. Just kind of get used to playing it. And last but not least, Benediction, because as a healing spell character, this is one of the most efficient healing spells. Because when we talk about Malukah, gets the energy rebate on healing spells, specifically, not defense cards, not skills, that kind of thing. So of the healing spells that are out there, you just kind of go look through them for the amount of healing you get for the amount of energy and the amount of kind of versatility options you have. And the best thing about Benediction going for it is the fact that it has that Bless on it, which increases direct healing done, which we are a direct healing healer. It increases regen done, we are a regen healer, and increases damage done, which, go figure, some of our teammates are going to be doing. So just a great card. Pick up as many of them as you can, crafting one sooner rather than later. And the only other card worth mentioning is Sparkle Life, but that's an Act 2 pickup for most difficulties because of the rarity issue. Where am I at here? Check. Dispel Magic. Both versions of Dispel Magic are very viable. Basically a required pickup. Pick between the buffer version or the Dispel 3. You will get the buffer talent. The buffer perk to make that more valuable. And yeah, flash heals. So of the healing spells, this one replaces itself, and once you get the level 3 talent, it becomes a 1 cost that you get 1 energy back. So it's very efficient for us. You don't necessarily have to craft it in Act 1. It is craftable in Act 1, so if you have the resources, sure, pick it up. If you don't, go ahead and just get some more of the filler cards and get them in Act 2 when you can afford the resources for them. I think that's everything for the starting cards from Malukah. Really, it's Benedictions, Shadow Mends, and Flash Heals. Those are the big ticket items for Malukah healing. And let's go to perks. So, for Malukah, buffer, because we're a healer that has cards that say buffer. Specifically just the Dispel Magic and the Detoxify and stuff. You'll want the +1 card, because everyone wants +1 card. You'll want the healing perks, because we're doing direct healing. You'll want the Bless, because we'll be having the Benedictions, or there's a couple other healing spells we can pick up late game that apply Bless. And applying, like, even if you don't end up playing many cards that have Bless on them, missing the opportunity of being able to benefit from them is a huge risk to not spend 1 point for. Like, this only costs 1 point, so even if you only get 1 or 2 casts with it, it didn't cost too much. Regen is Malukah's one of her biggest claims to fame. I recommend picking up the Shadow resistance increasing one, because by the late game you'll have decent amounts of regen, and the late game is where a lot of shadow damage happens and is very deadly to a lot of people. The other two, the math doesn't quite check out on the percent based extra healing, and the splashing one, I don't find a use for that, because if you have enough regen on you to make the splashing efficient, then the odds are the 2 people next to you have enough regen to make regen, like, that they don't need it, if that makes any sense. Your trouble's not going to be keeping people topped off so much as making sure that you have enough buffer with things like Vitality, which is why you're going to pick up the Vitality charges. Yes, we don't really have any cards to benefit from it in the starting deck, but there are a couple talent cards that really benefit from it, and you might pick up a couple late ones that have Vitality on them as well. Mainly, even if it's just that 1 talent card, this is well worth the 1 point investment. Obviously, if you need some sort of team pickups, you can cut on some of these gems or gold or health. Like, these 4 columns are mix and match to your heart's content. If you have to pick up a team one, do so. You have a little bit of spare here, but speed based on your order and line on the team comp, and then energy because energy is a good thing. Yeah. This page is always feels self-explanatory, but I always talk about it. Really just picking up this buffer perk, the regen perks, and the heal perks. Everything else is optional. All right. That's it for perks. Let's move on to Act 2. With Act 2, we won't have changed much in our deck. You'll be picking up these filler cards still, kind of determining which ones to replace and which ones to keep based on where you're at. But the biggest pickup is going to be the Spark of Life, because if you look for heal cards that have regen on them, there are not too many. Prayer Healing is a decent pickup. I don't recommend it because usually a lot of the healing is wasted. The same kind of thing happens with Spark of Life, except for Spark of Life has a better ratio. It also has the jump force. So even though it says only heal 9, the final couple of heals are healing more than the Prayer of Healing. So just because the benefit to cost ratio is better on Spark of Life than Prayer Healing. Prayer Healing is of course easier to, like, simpler to cast, I say, because you don't have to think about, because the play pattern with Spark of Life is play Spark of Life and then play a couple directed heals afterwards to fill in any gaps. The play pattern with Prayer Healing is play Prayer Healing and then is anyone still low, pick something else. Like, I'm talking more about it than I need to. As you can see, Vitalize used to be one of the ones that was a heal spell and had regen, but just the stats aren't there now. Maybe in future patches it's a viable option. Maybe go check it out. But for now, it's really just Spark of Life and Prayer Healing. Circle of Healing has a similar issue of a lot of the heals is usually wasted. I'd rather cast 2 Sparks of Life than 1 Circle of Healing. And you're not going to be generally casting a Circle of Healing every turn, because even with the 1 energy rebate, this still costs 4 energy. So that's more than you'd be getting a turn. So you have to have someone providing energy to you to be casting this, whereas you could just be casting the smaller heals for the similar effect without requiring outside help. And besides, you should rather be running something like Benediction that is applying Bless over something that's applying Regen, because you'll be able to get Regen just passively through your talent. You have that level 3 talent that's creating Regen for your team. Alright, not really many cards to talk about here. Different. And let's go into items. So when we're looking at items from Malukah, if you remember, I said, let's see, heal when healed. I can type when heal. With Malukah, whenever you apply Dark, you heal the lowest target. And whenever you directly heal someone, you heal the target. So there's a lot of double dipping into, you'll heal people a lot more often than the amount of cards you play. So with that, you want these on heal things. Not specifically the Winged Wand. The branch isn't so bad because this is regen to yourself, but unfortunately it's just to yourself. It's really the Holy Grail is the end-all be-all if you could pick it up, because yes, it has everything. But the one to really look out for from Malukah is Golden Bell. And Malukah has this unique way of playing around what I consider the biggest hurdle of Golden Bell. With Golden Bell, when you heal a full health hero, it doesn't trigger. But Malukah has a talent that says gain Vitality. And Vitality with Decadence on now says, hey, you gain 5 hit points, but you only heal 2. So therefore your max hit points, you no longer have max hit points. So if you add Vitality to someone that's at max hit points, they now have room to be healed again, which you could then trigger the Golden Bell again on them. And you get to this really cool play pattern with Malukah, where you've got your passive going. Not your passive, your talent card here. You've got Love Enhancer going, and you play one of these Shadow Men's. It'll trigger the Love Enhancer to give the whole team extra healing, extra vitality, making everyone no longer topped off. And then it'll trigger the Dark to then give a passive heal to the lowest health target, which will then trigger the bell. I maybe could have explained it better with a video. I didn't really have anything prepped for that. I didn't think about it until a little late. But it's really cool to get into that play pattern of, oh, by the way, my whole team has massive amounts of bless, or in case of Minotaur Horn, lots of powerful regen, because I get all these little triggers of extra healing from this dark, which is why I really recommend the Malukah keep as many Shadowmens as you can, or as you would like to play, because of that play pattern with the Minotaur Horn and the Golden Bell. Golden Bell is, you have to luck into it. Minotaur Horn, you can at least guarantee by going into the red zone and going to the cave Minotaur. That's not a usual path that a lot of people take, but I enjoy playing with the Minotaur Horn a lot. And I would try it out at least once you're playing Malukah. That's in the red zone, middle path, go to the cave, fight the boss. Yep. And otherwise, other items, Paladin Gauntlets, if you want to play around the Paladin Gauntlets, you go to that Ray of Hope card I mentioned. You can only craft 2 of them, which is why I don't necessarily recommend this as a end-all be-all strategy for Malukah, but you have a little bit of way to apply some bless to your team by doing the, you'd run both the Ray of Hopes and the Aura. What's the Aura we're running? And the Anthem of Hope to generate more courage on your team. Yep. Malukah aren't really any other items for healing other than the generic ones of stay alive, don't die. And Energize Rings is really the only thing else I'd mention. You can have some very heavy opening turns with Malukah because all of your talent cards cost 1 energy. So a little bit of extra energy goes a long way. Specifically because all these cards... I hate that view. Sorry. This is alphabetical. It's not sorted by costs. You have a couple semi-heavy cards, and you'll have a couple draw cards, and as the act goes on, you'll have your opening gambits of these Yin Rituals and Love Enhancer take just a little bit of extra energy, so the extra energy from the rings helps a lot. Yep, I feel like that's as much items as I can talk about. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything before we move on to Act 4. Nope, Act 4 it is. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Yep, Act 4. Malukah. Wrong screen. So, Meditate is the thing you're always looking for. This is the always grab card for healers. You can never have too many of these unless you have like 50. And even then, that's an edge case. Flash heals, you don't want to overdo it with these, but the more you have of these, the more consistent your first turn will be. The more expensive your first turn will be too, because if you spend 3 flash heals and you get all your rebates from your healing things, now you're playing full price for all your other cards. So that's kind of I'll run 3 or 4 of them if I can, but once you get to that point, you start running out of card slots for other things that don't vanish and that aren't just replacing themselves in your hand. Malediction, I will keep that for the entire game. We never talked about it in the starter deck. Just if it's in your hand, play it first. And just with normal play patterns, you should always be drawing cards before doing your other actions. So odds are, as long as you're keeping an eye out for Malediction, you'll remember to play it, and you don't need any sort of perks or anything to make this viable. Just having a decent hand, even if this was just, deal 5 of each, that's very nice because it's healing for 5 and it's applying 5 vulnerable. And it costs 0. So this is just one of the best talent cards in the game. I mean starter cards in the game. Meditates, yes. Flash heals, yes. Love Enhancer, like I said, Love Enhancer plus Yin Ritual. So what you'll do is you'll play Love Enhancer first and then Yin Ritual, since Yin will trigger Love, but Love will not trigger Yin. And with that going, you will get many a heals triggers off for your team. Benedictions are always going to be my favorite healing spell. And yes, Panacea. This is the one that we replaced our Dispel Magic. You really don't need it for once you get level 5, but you can't guarantee level 5 until after Twins. So I would replace your Dispel Magic with a Panacea once you are in Act 3 and have your healing talent, just because I find it is a more efficient way to play Dispel Magic. You don't have to play it. It's just more of a minor upgrade and worth noting, and just probably the stronger way to play Dispel Magic on Malukah until you get that level 5 talent. Alright. See what else we're missing here. I think that's everything for Malukah. let's talk about where you get Malukah and what kind of teams I'd run her on. So to get Malukah, I should have done this on the other screen. You have to go to Malukah's shop's right here. So in the green biome, she's here. To unlock her, you have to go in the starter zone. You have to go to the hatch, summon the demon, kill the demon, and then bring the horn to her here to unlock her. Doing so requires taking a boat here at the Crockman. So you have to have 1,000 gold or some other way to have a boat. Because then you'll come out of town, use the boat, come up here, give her the horn, and then she will join your party. Hitting this node with her in the group gives you a lot of free items, specifically a on-turn regen one potion. You get a bunch of potions for the team. And yeah, that's how you get her. And then team synergy, the way I would build around her. Of course, this is one of the teams I built with her. For this team, things that are happening is Magnus is bringing the AoE block and vulnerable. Sorry, I've had a lot of requests to look through these portions of the characters. There's really not much to see here unless if you've seen my guides. Evelyn is bringing a bunch of energize and support. She's also setting up for Wilbur here in this particular combination. Not really much related to Malukah. The only interaction between Malukah and her is that Evelyn was doing a bunch of rain and Malukah was doing baptism, but that is not a Malukah specific strategy, so I don't want to talk about that too much. But really, you're always going to have some sort of little synergies between your teammates. Not too many that are specific with Malukah for this team comp. Otherwise, other than just I wanted a stable healer that wasn't Otis, if that makes any sense. Like I like the idea of regen on this run. What am I missing here? There's a little bit anti-synergy with this team because what I was doing is I was running a lot of wet and putting wet stacks on Wilbur and then turning them into Bless. The problem is with Malukah's talent here, and this is a good talking point here, with this Mojo at level 5, this disables certain strategies that you may run into. So with those strategies, let's go look at the player base here. So there's a couple heroes that put debuffs on themselves and a couple strategies that do the same thing, and Malukah's Mojo turns that off. Specifically, Self-Burn Cornelius. If you get Mojo on Malukah, you will accidentally turn off Cornelius's fire, and Cornelius will dislike that very much. At least the self-burn version of Cornelius. Zek has a similar interaction with Dark. Zek will either be using Dark on himself to reduce the cost of spells, or to transfer them to the enemies, and if Malukah is removing them, that is no good. Malukah also has problems if you're trying to run a baptism combo, where you're trying to apply wet to your team, because wet is technically a debuff, and it will get removed. So even if there's a debuff you're looking to have on your teammates, then Malukah accidentally clears it. Same thing with Grookly and Bleed. There are some versions where you're like, hey, I want to do things with Bleed on Grookly. Usually that's not a problem because Grookly will use it and clear it himself on his own turn, but you got to be careful with that with Malukah in case there's one turn where you wanted to build up the bleed stacks on yourself. Malukah will just clean that right off accidentally, and you don't really notice it's going to be a problem until those final couple acts where you're level 5 and you're like, oops, I just destroyed my entire strategy right before the final bosses, and it's very dangerous. So those are the ones to look out with Malukah. Otherwise, Malukah pairs fairly well with nope, healing version of Malukah does not pair well with Zek. I lied. Because since Malukah is applying Dark to herself, well, very narrow case with Zek here. Zek has Dark Feast. Malukah, since she has a lot of these Shadowmens, she can kind of put some Dark on Zek early on. But again, this is the exact same thing that the Mojo is counterintuitive with. So if you are going with Zek, you can't pick up the Mojo. You got to do Shadow Form, which doesn't do anything for your healing plan. But if you're playing with Zek, you're doing it in mind for the Dark Feast plan, probably. Malukah is a direct healer and regen, so she does nothing for your team's effective hit points. Effective hit points being how much damage you can take before dying from full health to none. So she needs to be paired up with some sort of blocker, preferably, you know, so a Magnus or a Bree that, or a Heiner that apply a lot of shields and blocking to begin with. Well, it depends on how you build Bree. Heiner and Magnus. I would say Heiner and Malukah get along very well because Taunt is, I believe, considered a buff now instead of a debuff. So you should be good. You will not clear off Heiner's Taunt. Yeah. What else we got here? Regen. Yep. High health. You want someone else to be applying the block, and you will be in charge of making sure the team gets lots of vitality in the late game. There's not really anyone in the early game that can help make your team beefy other than just warriors in general. So Malukah goes well with warriors because she is a regen healer and does not add much vitality to the game until the late game. Yep, that's all I got for you. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will catch you later. Peace.